No one can do you better than you. Lean into who you are, lean into your superpowers, and figure out how to frame who you are in such a way where people not only resonate with it, but the right people resonate with it. Because that's where you're really going to be successful in growing your business, not following somebody else's like blueprint or plan or business model, but starting here.
Step into the world of success with your brand amplified, the ultimate podcast designed to unravel the intricacies of thriving businesses. I'm your host, Annika Jackson, and I'm on a mission to uncover the stories, strategies, and secrets that have propelled entrepreneurs and business leaders to success. I am excited to have somebody who is a new friend, but who I really hit it off with, and I'm now doing some work with, which is going to propel me to the next level. I'm telling you right now. Mark my words. Christian
Yes.
Smutherman of Growth Loop. Thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited to have this conversation. It's already been a lot of fun working together.
And it's just
I'm
started.
looking. I know, right? I know, right? But yeah, I'm ready to jump in and have this conversation. I know it's going to be a lot of fun.
Yeah. You have a background as an educator and, you've done many other things. You've now figured out how to leverage the things that you can teach, the skills that you have with AI, and how to really educate us as small business owners or people who have an idea of something they want to put into the world, how to ruminate, how to germinate, and then how to launch the idea and be successful. And I think what's different is a lot of people say this, right? A lot of people say they're going to get you to the next level. You just have to do this. But already in what I've done with you, I've seen a whole other way that has really opened my eyes and gives me a lot more excitement, right? Keeps me more engaged. And notice to these other people that I've tried working with a couple of other groups and, was excited at first, but then was like, oh, you know what? They're not asking me these questions that you ask. They're not really trying to understand, and they're not showing me the full capabilities of what you've done with people, what the scope of work that I can do. Help me talk through some of these issues, because it doesn't matter if you're an entrepreneur, small business owner, aspiring. If you don't know exactly how to price things, you need an expert there who's done this a million times with other people who can say, in your field, I've seen this really work, right? And those are the things that we need, rather than saying, let me just throw some numbers out, throw some spaghetti at the wall and see who bites. So
Absolutely.
I usually don't do that long of an intro, but I had to for you, because I'm not just working with you on one project, I'm working with you on multiple projects now.
Absolutely.
So let's get into it. Talk to us about your background and what got you to today.
Oh man. All right. So I'm gonna try to keep it short because there's a lot,
Yeah.
that I could share. But yeah, I'll start kind of going all the way back. So after I graduated college, I'd studied English and I had this vision of being a novelist, and I still write and everything, but I graduated and I just didn't really know what direction to take. I was like, man, like, do I go to business school, or, should I be a lawyer? Like, what should I do? And I got this opportunity to work at this really innovative school that served low-income students, at-risk students in Trenton, New Jersey. And it was just a totally different model. It was sandwiched in between like a psychological ward on one side and a prison on the other side.
Oh my gosh.
And if you know anything about Trenton, it's one of the roughest cities in America after the result of like the deindustrialization in the 70s. But in any case, I was working at this school, amazing model. But there were just some things that I saw in terms of the implementation around the vision and how we're actually serving those kids. And I started to think to myself, I'm like, man, like this is really a business, right? Like this is actually a business, but there are just so many missing pieces. And so I decided that I wanted to figure out how to solve that. So I ended up taking some program at Harvard that kind of exposed me to some new things around business modeling and financial accounting and all these different things. And I ended up transitioning from being a teacher, which is where I started, to this really interesting accelerator business model where I was working in Washington, D.C. with all these ed tech founders and like school founders that were like bringing these new ideas to market. And we had this really interesting partnership with Stanford Design School where we would take these leaders and we would take them through the sort of like business model canvas process and help them innovate their model and figure out how to go to market. Well, during that, right, because we worked with like over 100 different founders, I started to see these patterns, right, around vision and mission and how to communicate the messaging, right, of the business and how that actually translates to go to market strategy. Like, how do we actually acquire customers and users? How do we actually go out there and get funding? Like, what are we really selling? And I saw these problems not only with these founders, but also at the organization that I was working with. So at one point, I had sort of grown within this organization. I went to the CEO and I said, "Hey, I'm not coming back." I literally went into the office and I said, "I'm not coming back to this office." And they were shocked. And I told her, I said, "Listen, I want you to be my first client. I want to start my own business. I want to support you guys in that way, right? And I got some things I want to pursue because I had this vision of solving those problems that I saw while working at this organization." They freaking agreed. They freaking agreed, right? So I ended up like basically making my salary, right, but through a consulting contract,
Uh-huh.
and I was remote, right? So I was on the remote shit probably, it was back in like 2017, right? So ended up, turning this company that I was working for into a client, making basically my salary working remotely, and I started reaching out to my network and building these relationships and saying, "Hey, like, listen, I can help you with your mission, your vision, your messaging," right? I was translating that skill set I got in my English background to communications. And I started to quickly see, okay, well, we can get the foundation of the business right, but then how do we actually do marketing and sales the right way? Right. And so from there, that's really where the origin story of Growth Loop emerged, where I come in to businesses, I help make sure we get the DNA of the business right. And then from there, we'll install all of the infrastructure, the systems that are really necessary to go to market. And then we train business owners and their teams on how to effectively manage their sales and marketing infrastructure so that they can do what? Make freaking money and impact at the same time. So I love what I do. AI recently, coming into the forefront has changed everything for if you know how to use it.
Yeah.
And so now we're really able to come in and install these AI systems and infuse this sort of beautiful new technology into these existing ecosystems and just take people to the next level relatively quickly without them having to go through like what you were talking about, working with people who don't know what they're doing, right? Because there are a ton of sorry marketing agencies. You don't know what you're doing, most of you. But right, it's we're trying to solve that problem so that people are no longer wasting money on retainers. They're not wasting money throwing stuff on the wall and praying that things work. We're using best practices and principles to transform the business and actually scale.
Yeah. And it's a funny thing of like, I teach digital media management. It's not just about sales and marketing. It's a whole ecosystem of UI, UX and streaming platforms and equity with broadband and, runs the gamut across what you think of as digital media. But even as somebody who has experience in marketing, PR, digital branding, it's really hard to take that time to look at yourself and be objective. And so I feel like we all need that outside perspective because we
Yes.
get too tied up in every little piece of minutia, right? And then it can lead to not actually getting anything launched, not doing the thing that will really help people.
100%, 100%.
So what does your life look like today? What kind of
Yeah.
businesses are you working with? Do
Yep.
you only work with people who are trying to bring something positive in the world? What's the gamut?
I love that question. So, what I'm looking for are high impact experts who really want to position themselves as thought leaders in their business as like an authority within their space. And so these can be people that have B2B service businesses that have some sort of transformational mechanism for other businesses. It can be business to professional focused businesses that are trying to help professionals go to the next level. Or it can be people who really want to build like an excited and engaged community of individuals who want to transform themselves and go to that next level. But ultimately, I'm looking for people that are purpose driven,
Mhm.
that are really aligned to not just making income, but making an impact. and who are willing to put in the work that is really required to scale a seven-figure business, because it's not easy to do that, right? We can make it simpler, but that doesn't mean that it's easy. So well, those are the types of people I'm looking for. And really my job, especially in the early stages of working with folks, is to help them like re-encounter their superpowers. Like I want you guys to see, because this is what I truly believe, right? We don't live in Marvel Universe, right? This isn't a DC comic, right? This isn't Dragon Ball Z. We're not Super Saiyans, but we do have superheroes in our universe. And in my opinion, the superheroes are people who have real expertise, who have transformational frameworks and visions that they can bring to market in order to help other people self-actualize, right? So if you've got something like that, I can 100% help you take it to market, and I want to help you take it to market.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's one of the things also that I've seen, just having positivity and people that I know are invested in me and want to help me grow and grow my business, right? I've seen, I mean, right now, just a couple of days ago, I checked and my podcast had almost 95,000 downloads in 30 days. I was at 65,000 before,
What?
right? But I work with like a former Zen monk on his program. I'm working with you. I've been surrounding myself lately with people who I know are the right people and have this positivity, and something's in the ether where I'm like, oh, see, now is
Yep.
I wasn't ready to launch this 6 months ago. Now I have even more proof of concept for what I do to pour in. So it is like things happen at the right time, right? You just have to be
Yeah.
open to them. But here's my question for you. You know, I'm a single mom. I'm getting my MBA. I teach grad school. I have a full-time job for a
Mhm.
nonprofit foundation in the education space. I have two, actually three now podcasts. One is launching next month with the Zen activation program with the former Zen monk. We're working on getting a Zen activation program to market. We're working on that with you as well. Then I have life, I have elderly dogs, I have,
Mhm.
all the other things that happen. So how can I be successful with what you're putting together, knowing that it does take time? You can't just snap your fingers and expect to make seven figures. But I do know that this is a program that is not like any other program out there, and that I do know will help people get results. So what kind of time investment and what are some of the things that you walk people through?
Man, that is such a good question, because we're all busy, right?
Yeah.
Everybody's got life.
Yeah.
Then if you're what I call a multi-potentialite, meaning you've got
Ooh.
all these different interests and talents, you probably got your hands in different things. And so part of what I focus on is helping entrepreneurs like really zero in on the activities, the 20% of activities that are going to get them 80% of the results, right? The Pareto principle, if you know what I'm saying, right? Because there's so many things that you could be doing, but what should you be doing that's going to move the needle forward? So part of that is getting really clear on your entrepreneurial ecosystem, right? Like, what are all these product offerings and things that you're doing? How are
Mm.
they interrelated, right? What are the actual activities internally that you need to focus on and the buttons you actually need to push on a day-to-day basis? And so, when folks work with me, what I'm really looking for is like, how can I eliminate all of this like extra fluff, this BS that people are working on that's just like really taking up their time and it's not moving the needle. So when you work with Growth Loop, there's sort of two sort of lanes of things that need to happen. One, right, we meet, right, and we have our coaching sessions, and they're about an hour where we're really dialing in on the vision, the model, what needs to be executed, getting super clear on accountability as well, and like how we're actually going to achieve those things, our plan and our strategy. And then the other piece are the activities that I need you to do during the week, right? But what the beauty of what we do, right? And ultimately, right, from the Growth Loop side, like, I probably need you to put in like 30 minutes to an hour in your homework. Sometimes you might go down a little rabbit hole and spend a little more time with the AI and the GPTs that I give to you guys, because it's actually fun, right? But I've really structured this where like you don't have to put in a lot of time to get the outputs that you need going through the process. But then once we've built everything, right? Because the way I think about business, I think about it almost like it's a science. It's something we need to engineer, right? It's infrastructure. So once we've built the infrastructure, which growth loop takes on like 90% of that, right? I really just need your brain. But once we build the infrastructure, then like what are the 20 to 30 minutes of activities that you can spend every day to keep that engine running, right? And like the vision that I have for every founder, every CEO that works with Growth Loop is that 80% of your time is spent on thought leadership and content and sales, right? I don't want you wasting time trying to figure out how to chase after leads. I don't want you spending time trying to figure out how to deliver all of your services. What I want you to focus on is growing the brand. So spending 15 to 20 minutes a day on that and closing deals, right? And so obviously you're going to need to fill your calendar in the beginning, especially if you're a service-based business.
Right.
But what we then teach you guys how to do is how to delegate, because that's the most important
Please.
thing, right? Like, how do you actually delegate? And so one of the things that, and we'll get to this at some point, Annika, in our partnership, is how do you actually gamify your internal operations for your staff? And so the way I like to do things with my sales team is everything's a video game, right? Everything's a video game. So I'll pay them an hourly rate, right, for the work. But then, right, for sales, for every booked call that they get, and they're really high quality calls, they get another hour of pay,
Hmm.
right?
Nice.
And then for every close, right, there's a negotiated bonus. And
Mhm.
so what does that do for your team? It motivates them.
Yeah.
But then as the entrepreneur, as the business owner, you're still able to maintain high margins within your business. So we look at these different areas of the business and we figure out, well, how can we gamify that? How can we delegate this, right? How can we eliminate that? Because that's just a time suck and a waste of time. And then how can we focus on the things that light you the F up? Try not to cuss, guys. What's going to light you up? What really like greases your wheels and gets you going and makes you want to wake up and show up every single day? And we want to create an infrastructure, an ecosystem, a reality where that's possible. And it is possible.
Yeah. Okay, let's take a step back and go back to your comment about you've been remote since 2017. What
Yep.
did that mean? Have you traveled to different countries, worked from different time zones? Did you settle in one place?
That is a great question. Okay. So I'm still, getting my feet wet with traveling. So I've been to maybe 5 or 6 countries so far. I lived in China for a little while and I studied Mandarin. I've lived in Denmark for a while. Recently, I just actually left Peru and I actually like met some amazing people in Peru, ended up hiring somebody from Peru as well. Yeah, it's just super cool. And then now I'm in Brazil. I'm in Rio de Janeiro, and then I have business partners now that I've built relationships in Sao Paulo. So I'm going to be in Sao Paulo in a couple of weeks. I've got somebody flying from the US who's a partner now who like, is like, oh yeah, we all got to meet up and like really build these like $1 million businesses. So the way that I look at Growth Loop and really the vision that I have for everyone I work with is how do we create freedom businesses?
Yeah.
Businesses that put us in position to live the life we want on our terms without having to clock in every single day. No shade. No shade to the employers out there. There's nothing wrong with that, right? But like there's so many of us that like want to be free. We want to travel, right? We want to be able to go to different time zones. We want to learn new languages. We want to experience different cultures. And so growth loop in a lot of ways is meta when it comes to that, because for me, like I live literally all the things I teach, like I walk, all the things I preach, I do. Right. So yeah, right now I'm in like BRT time. I think I'm like 2 hours ahead of EST, which actually low key is a cheat code because whenever I wake up, like I wake up every day at like 7:30, it's like 5:30, right?
Oh,
EST. So
it means
I
it's
feel like
2:30 in the morning where I live.
right. Okay. Yeah. Right. It's super early where you live. So, sometimes I'll have, because I work with a lot of folks. I love what I do. So, I'll be doing things late, but I end up having, and I like to call it like my CEO schedule. And the way I look at it is I have 2 days every day, right? My first day is from 7:30 to about 12 p.m. Then I'll take, a break. And then my second day, right? is after that. But because I have this extra time, especially in this time zone, it enables me to do things like go to the beach, right? It enables me to have time to meditate, to go to the gym every day, to make sure that my nutrition is optimized so that I can perform at an extremely high level every single day. So, yeah, part of my vision is for you guys to also be able to have that and just create the kind of reality that you want for yourself and for your life on your own terms.
Mm. Yeah, amazing. How did you become the person you are? Like you went to
Oh, man.
Princeton. Like, what was your family background? Were your family entrepreneurs? It's
Great question.
imagine they gave you a lot of support. I mean, you just seem so grounded.
That's a great question. So I would say growing up, kind of a mixed bag. I'm from a super small town, Darlington, South Carolina. There's like I have so much like nostalgia for Darlington, but as I've gotten older, I can see how there's a lot of poverty there, right? There's the lack of opportunity. My family, where I was born, like we're literally being raised right around the corner from like old slave plantations. And, I remember growing up and listening to my mother's stories and the way that they had to deal with racism and discrimination and living on she was the last generation of sharecroppers, my mother. And so yep, they lived on a landowner's property and they picked cotton and tobacco and all these different things, right? And my mom would tell me stories about working in the tobacco barn as a child, right? And so I grew up with this kind of deep anchoring in the South and that Southern experience. And then we ended up, moving and being raised in Charlotte, North Carolina. We were kind of going between
Hmm.
North and South Carolina. So I had this metropolitan experience. And, Charlotte, it's an amazing place, but there was a lot going on, during my childhood. There was a lot of positivity, right? Because Charlotte was like a booming banking town, but there was also, some challenges there. A lot of the young men that I grew up with are no longer here, right? Whether they were murdered or, they got themselves involved in whatever kind of activity. And so I saw a lot of different sides of the world. But where I think, I got my anchoring was one, I'm so grateful for my father who was such a hard worker, but we didn't have everything in the world, but like, he did a great job to provide us with those resources and all of that. But, where I really think that I was able to just become myself was, my mother. She invested so much in us. She gave up, like she was, heading towards getting her PhD, right? Coming from this impoverished background, she worked her way to get there, but she gave that up to raise us.
Wow.
And she gave up everything, right, for us. And I remember growing up and, she would be reading books to us and, we'd play Jeopardy every day and we'd go to the park and, go to museums and all these different things, right? We didn't have a lot, but we had such an enriching childhood through my mother's ingenuity and creativity. And so by the time we were in kindergarten, we were reading novels. By the time we were in second grade, we were reading at a college level. And
Amazing.
our teachers were just absolutely shocked.
Yeah.
And, high school was a tough time for me. I had a cousin who was like my brother. We were raised with our cousins who was killed on Mother's Day in 2008. And I mean, it just plunged our family into a deep depression. And then we were just going through a lot of things as a family. We didn't have a lot, things were really tough for me in high school. I was getting into some issues with like a local gang and it's just all these different things were going on. I remember every single day I would be harassed for hours because the only hoodie I had was a gang color. And so every single day, I was under this kind of duress and we would get bussed out like hours, 2 hours to this one school and 2 hours back. So we'd wake up super early in the
Wow.
morning. And so I remember it was just such a stressful time. But during that time, I just got so locked in because the only thing that I could control was my education. And so I had no plans for graduate. I had no plans, no vision really. I didn't. I was depressed. I was lost at that time. But the only thing I knew I wanted was A's. I knew I wanted A's, right? I knew that I could go to school and I could get 100. And I became obsessed with that. Like literally obsessed with just doing my best in the classroom for no other reason than to get a perfect score. And so that set me up though for success because my mother got some information from somebody who recommended that I apply to this boarding school that was the first public boarding school in the country. It was considered and is a University of North Carolina, but it was a high school. And so I applied. And I remember I would dream about that school every single day because I just wanted to get out of my situation. And I'm so grateful because I was accepted and it totally changed my life. Through that school, I was able to get into a science technology program at Duke University. I got a National Science Foundation grant. They sent me out to Denmark to do nanotechnology research. I got another fellowship at University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill's Business School. And again, it just changed my life. And so I had never even thought about where I wanted to go to school, right? And I remember the summer between my junior and senior year was when I finally thought about it. And I remember thinking to myself, the only thing I want to be is number one, right? And so I looked and I said, what's the number one school in America? And it was Princeton. And I said, that's where I'm going to go. And so I put all my focus into that. I had a tough time, in high school during that time, but somehow I ended up getting in, right? Somehow I ended up getting in, and Princeton really changed my life. It put me in position to think critically, to explore my gifts, to, really test my will. It was the most challenging experience I ever had. And even though during that time I didn't really get clear on what path I wanted to choose, what I did get clear on is what I was passionate about,
Mm-hmm.
right? I got clear on myself and I got clear on what my capabilities really were and my willpower and my desire to go out there and exert shit into the world,
Mm-hmm.
right? And so, yeah, once I got out, they let the dogs out. And, I struggled a lot. I had some challenges, I'll be transparent. I had a lot of baggage from childhood, a lot of trauma. And so, I struggled with things. I struggled with a drug addiction. I struggled with alcohol. I struggled with many different things. But thankfully, by the grace of God, the thing that changed my direction to really put everything in perspective was I was engaged in some activity I shouldn't have been engaged in, but I ended up getting assaulted by 10 men in Washington, D.C. on,
Wow.
on Father's Day.
Oh my gosh.
And, they jumped me, they broke my shoulder. I got hit in the back of the head with a pistol. I just got completely messed up. I got robbed. A friend of mine also got hurt in that altercation. And because I was going through a tough time at that time, I was dealing with my demons at that time. And I remember, waking up in my bed because I had lost my job at that time. There was just so much going on, with my life. This is the ugly side to the story.
Yeah.
And I remember waking up and I'm like, do you want to know what's going I could feel it. I could hear it. Do you want to know what's really going on with you, bro? And I start talking to myself. And it's like, what I heard was, you're being crushed by the weight of your ambition. The action that you're taking is not commensurate with your ambition. You really do know where you want to go, but you're fucking around. So I remember looking up at the ceiling, wasting away because I had no insurance, no money, no food. I was literally living off protein powder. I kid you not. I was living off protein powder. And I said to myself, I'm going to take over. I'm going to become who I'm meant to be. I'm going to rehabilitate my shoulder myself. I'm going to start this business. I'm going to write those books. And from literally that day, I started doing push-ups. I started doing the rehabilitation. I started looking for opportunities, right? I started putting the pieces together. And that same year, because at this point I had fallen off with certain aspects of my business. I reactivated my business. And literally within 6 months, everything just started taking off again. And I got back focused. I got into the gym, right? And I turned my life around. And it took some time. It was a little rocky because, self-work is not easy all the time, especially when you're battling with things, when you need to, refather or remother yourself or deal with, past traumas. But I worked through those things. And I'm still a work in progress. But I think what I'm so grateful for is that I have the opportunity to come into encounter with challenge that revealed to me who I really was, that revealed to me my will, that revealed to me my ability to, in the face of the darkest moments, find the light. And I mean that, right? Literally. And you have to sometimes look for that within yourself, right? And so now what I found, and I'll wrap this up, is that I'm totally internally self-sustaining. I find joy and love and peace and happiness inside. I don't need to look outside for anybody else out of in a relationship or a friendship or a job or whatever. It comes from me. And my business and my passion for my business comes from me, right? And I get to enjoy that beauty with other people versus me constantly looking for something, right, to fix me, right, or to make me happy. So that's a long, long roundabout way
I
of
love
answering
it.
your question.
I appreciate you getting so deep. Those are the best moments, I think. You know, it's great to talk about the success you have now, but we all have a story. We all have the ups and downs. You know, I have many ups and downs. And
Yeah,
if you don't do that internal work, doesn't matter what you look like on the outside, what people think you've achieved, you're not going to reach the level that you could. If you don't love
completely.
yourself first, right? It's funny, you're going to meet Alan next week, but one thing that he says is, you know, your number one soulmate is yourself. So if you're not right with yourself, any other relationship, communication is not with other people, right? Those relationships, business, personal, it's not going to be as good as it could be.
Wow.
So it sounds like you did that at a fairly young age, found that, right?
I got
So
lucky.
it's
I'm
amazing.
blessed.
But you have to go through the downs to realize, to fight for it, to fight for you. So, yeah. So thank you. Because I did not know this story before. But it's really good because also you understand where people that you're working with are coming from. You know
Yeah.
that they've had some struggles. You know that they haven't had these perfect lives. And so it is really a journey. And now I feel like even more invested in our journey.
Well,
So,
I appreciate that. Yeah. And you're 100% correct. I think we all go through things. And I think what I've found, especially with working with people, is patience.
mm,
Patience is not just a virtue, it is one of the most important values that we can possess. And so one thing that I love just allowing people to figure their shit out and creating an environment where they can do that and they don't feel this pressure. Like you gotta, if you're not doing this, no, like let's really unravel the knots, the onion, and just make sure we're good. And if we can do that, oh, making money is the icing on the cake. That is a given, right? So 100%. We just gotta be patient. Gotta be patient.
all right. Now I have to go back to business because there's a question I've been thinking about where you mentioned that you have a team, they work with the leads, they help you get, things booked. There are so many companies out there in my inbox, email, LinkedIn, ads every day that are trying to sell me a list or trying to tell me that they have the be all end all funnel, or they're trying to use AI. And it's funny because I'm like, I know this person personally, but this definitely does not sound like them. It's either it's an assistant who doesn't know their voice, doesn't know our relationship, or it's a chat bot, but it's not genuine. So what are the things that you do differently that really help create these genuine connections and help your clients reach this success so quickly?
Beautiful. I think that's you hit the nail on the head with one of the last two words you said, genuine and connection, right? I think that, what happens far too often is people get too focused on like metrics. So instead of really understanding what the core essence of connection means, right? They're just doing these activities to get the connection. But is it a genuine connection or a shallow connection? And I think what's wrong with a lot of marketing today is that it's a shallow approach to growing a business that doesn't actually work long term or really in the short term. Because ultimately, what a lot of folks don't understand is that marketing and sales are not really distinct areas of a business. They're really fully intertwined. They're like twin flame, right? Like marketing, all it is sales communication,
Yes.
right? And sales is service. And so
Yes.
what are you doing through everything? Every aspect of your business should be communication, right? In the service of providing service to
Mhm.
people, to actually helping them. So, the way that I approach marketing is figuring out first and foremost before we do anything, what are the actual problems that people have? Genuinely. Like, who are the people that I want to serve? And what are they struggling with each and every day? What are their fears? What are their wants? What are their desires? What do they actually need? And before I go to market and attempt to sell anything or communicate anything in relation to sales, I want to make sure that I can serve that person and provide them with a real solution. So that's the first piece, right? Like we got to get clear on our ability to create an actual transformation and then package that as an opportunity, as an offer. So that's step one. We infuse our business with that kind of thinking, strategic thinking. But then two, what happens when it's time to actually communicate with people, right? Well, like instead of approaching sales as I gotta like connect with this person and like pitch my service to them immediately, no. Like, how do I create a personalized message to somebody that I really care about and let them know and let them understand and make a judgment for themselves, right? That like, hey, I've actually got something of value to you. I actually took the time to understand you and what you're going through.
Mhm.
And what I'm pitching is a relationship.
Yeah.
What I'm pitching is a connection first. Because what I never want to do, and I'm sure you might have felt this, is I don't ever want to sell something
Mhm.
to somebody that I'm not meant to serve. Right.
Yes. 100%.
And so, you know what I mean? It's like, what is the freaking point? Right? Like, that's not going to build relationship. That's not going to help people get results. And so for me, like, I'm always thinking, how can I offer help? How can I provide value before I ever talk about what I do? And how do I do this in a way that is zero pressure to anyone? So I always tell people, right, when I start having conversations with them, hey, I just want to, and I'm real about this. I want to give you insight, whether you work with me or not. I don't care, right? What I care about is that you go to the next level. If it's with me, bet we're going to be very successful together. If it's not with me, here's the resources. Here's the way to think about it. Go find the solution, right? And I think when you move in that frequency and you infuse that into your communications, what happens? You attract your tribe,
Mhm.
right? You attract the people that you're ultimately meant to work with. So my funnel, the way that I've built it is it's not about selling something on the front end, right? It's not about pushing somebody into some scammy product or whatever. It's about providing an immense amount of value up front, right? Showcasing that, hey, like I thought about you, I care about you, I want the best for you. And hey, here's an opportunity to work with me if it makes sense for you. And we can ingrain that into everything that we say and everything that we do, even with AI, right? All AI does is follow who you are.
Yep.
So a lot of because it's not intelligent, it's almost intelligent. And it takes its cues from the founder. So if somebody's reaching out and they feel like, this is a bot or this is a scam, well, guess what? The founder hasn't done the work to not come across that way. Right. And so we got to do that inner work first and then allow our tools to amplify who we actually are.
Yeah.
Hopefully that answers your question.
Oh, yeah, 100%. And I think, that is part of your message, your approach, because we met on LinkedIn and I don't respond to a lot of people, but the way that you approached it was you said, yeah, you work with these kind of people. We're already connected, thought you'd reach out. Weren't trying to sell me anything, just telling me what you do. I'm just looking at our messages right now. And I was like, I don't have anything that would be fit right now, but let's talk about having you on my podcast. We had an intro meeting and you're so genuine, you're so authentic, you're so transparent that I immediately was like, all right, yes to the podcast, but also I'm going to sell you on working with me. so,
Mm.
so you didn't even have to do the selling just by being you, you did it. Right. So that's what I'm looking for. I'm looking for those genuine interactions. And that is when you find your tribe, but it's also when you know that somebody's going to take care of you. They're going to take care of this idea that you have and, and really help help it come out into the world, be the doula or,
Absolutely. Yes. Yes.
help it, be a healthy birth. So
Absolutely.
yeah, amazing.
Absolutely.
Well, we could go on for hours, but I know that you do have a call to action, which is a free funnel blueprint to grow leads. And is
Yep.
that on your website?
Yeah. So you could find it on my LinkedIn. You can also go. So I don't know if there'll be like follow up or anything, but there's also a landing page we've got where literally you can just go download the overarching blueprint. But if you want to connect with me, go to LinkedIn, shoot me a DM, right? And I'm more than happy to have a conversation with anybody that's watching this and just help them think through their business. What's going on? What's going right? Where can we actually like fine tune some things and what can we shift to actually get the results that we're looking for? And I'd love to do that for anybody just to help you out. And then from there, just give you some resources and help you go to that next level.
Yeah. Well, and everything will be linked in the show notes. So you'll know how to get a hold of Christian very easily. As we wrap up, do you have one or two favorite quotes, mottos, mantras, verses that continue to help you power through and stay in tune with who you are so that you can put that energy out into the world?
I do. I think this is not just for me, but it's for anyone. And it's this: no one can do you better than you. Lean into who you are, lean into your superpowers, and figure out how to frame who you are in such a way where people not only resonate with it, but the right people resonate with it. Because that's where you're really going to be successful in growing your business, not following somebody else's like blueprint or plan or business model, but starting here, right? Once you get this figured out, all the other pieces, it'll start to come together. But nobody can do you better than you. Never forget that.
Perfect thing to end with. Perfect sentiment. Words to really think about and not just think about, but actually remember and put into action. So, Christian Smutherman, thank you so much for being here. Thank you to everybody who's watching or listening to this episode of Your Brand Amplified. And I'll be back again in another couple days with another amazing guest to share their story, their journey, and help you on yours. Thanks for listening or watching to this episode of Your Brand Amplified. Don't forget to leave us a rating or review on your favorite podcast listening platform. And if you want to learn more, check us out at yourbrandamplified.com.